Welcome, everyone. So this is our Funding for Futures webinar, part of a larger webinar series, actually, of this project, focused on community-led just transition with this specific session. And we're going to explore quite a broad spectrum of different topics, but through very concrete community-based stories and examples that will touch on topics of decent work, of the energy transition, and also of community organizing. That's kind of our main topic for this session. To give you a bit of an outline of what we have planned for the webinar, this is the welcome and a bit of the purpose and orientation for the session. We're going to explore a bit the theme of just transition all together as a group with some interactions. Then we're going to hear from the 3 case studies with the speakers that we have here. Thank you for being willing to share. We're going to have some dialogues in small groups to deepen based on what we've heard, to maybe ask some questions, but also for everybody really to share and exchange experiences, knowledge, insights, and yeah, have a bit of time for reflections and learning, and a closing, a little feedback form, and any next steps. So with this, I would love to get a bit of a sense of who's in the room. And Chiara, maybe you can put the link also in the chat for the Menti, and I'll start that. Okay, I put it in the chat now. I'll share my screen again with this so we can see responses as people are interacting. So to get a bit of a sense of who's in the room today, you can pick what fits best. If you're representing a local community, if you're a community organizer, an activist, maybe a researcher, policymaker, if you're working for an NGO. If none of these make any sense to you, please select other. Maybe let us know in the chat, in the Zoom chat, who you are, so you can get a little bit of a sense. Okay, so for now, we see we have mainly people from local communities, community organizers, or NGOs present. Give you a little sense of that. Great. Let's see for the next slide. What does a just transition mean to you? Specifically also like a community-led just transition. Now a few more people writing, but I love the start of it. It was like love and equity, like the 2 first big words. I was like, wow, that's a wave here. Okay, but now we also have social justice, building people power, ecofeminism, equity. There's its grassroots and place-based. That's actually interesting. The place-based part, I think, actually makes a huge difference with this sense of belonging, a positive impact for all, empowerment, equality. No one is left behind, and bottom up, safety, social justice, and ecology. Metamorphosis. That's interesting. Whoever wrote that, if you want to write something on the Zoom chat, what do you mean? How is just transition a metamorphosis? It's intriguing. Yeah, things like-minded, led by people, roots. Also interesting. Great, thanks for that. I have one more question. Just to hear a little bit, what are maybe some of the motivations why you're joining this webinar? If there's something particular you would love to learn about, share that with us here. Okay, you can still write. I'm just going to read out some of the things shared already. How to motivate people, develop network and connections, to hear different stories and perspectives, just energy transition, what can that be? To improve our working method, to hear about different approaches from different local contexts, to discover new ways to keep learning and working in my community, curious about the ideas you will be putting forward, what just transition means to other people, new approaches to the same problems. Interesting. Thank you for participating. Very, very interesting and nice to see. I'm going to go back to the other slide. Wait. Oh, here we go. All right. I'm gonna just share for a few minutes to kind of set a bit the context around just transition. There's everything you put on the word cloud is beautiful and definitely part of what a just transition is all about. And in reference to both the Funding for Futures project and also an interesting ally organization that's really focused on it, I just wanted to also share some of the definitions or kind of frameworks that are used there. So in the Funding for Futures project, which this webinar is a part of, we define just transition as a comprehensive systemic shift towards a more equitable and sustainable society that tackles the root causes of injustice within economic, political, and social structures. And this is part of where all of the subgrantees and different collaborators within the project were kind of in an ongoing inquiry to reflect, like, how does our work contribute towards that? How do we challenge inequality? How can we inspire others and take steps, in that? And then from the Climate Justice Alliance, which I will be also sharing like a beautiful graphic that they've created in a next slide. They define a just transition as a vision-led, unifying, and place-based. So they also have the place-based there, like somebody wrote. Set of principles, processes, and practices that build economic and political power to shift from an extractive to a regenerative economy. I think and that the transition itself must be just and equitable, redressing past harms and creating new relationships of power for our future through reparation. Part of the origins and history, which I think it's always kind of interesting to know where things come from. But of course, they evolve and change also with time, and they are adopted and utilized and expressed in different ways as that develops, which is beautiful. But from the original point, as a kind of real terminology, just transition comes from the 1980s. Used a lot in the U.S. labor unions and environmental justice movement groups, rooted a lot from low-income communities of color in the United States, and really bringing forth the need to phase out industries that cause a lot of harm to the workers, harm to community health, harm to ecosystems through extractive or polluting practices, and at the same time also providing just pathways for workers and communities to transition to other jobs, livelihoods, improving the quality of life. And it aims to combat the inequalities that are created by integrating both social and economic justice into the environmental action. So that by, creating like water power and dams, that it doesn't harm local communities, for example, which could be a great step towards renewable energy, but then could it be actually socially unjust or harmful. So the just transition ensures that the shift to a sustainable low carbon economy is also fair and inclusive and leaves nobody behind. So that's part of that. And from that kind of more original understanding of the term, it was also kind of structured around a few key components. And I'm sharing that now because I think it's an interesting, just to keep loosely kind of in our minds as we're also listening to the specific stories that are going to be presented today. So the part that's there and comes also, yeah, from the labor unions and the workers is around decent work. How can we transition jobs, have greener jobs, have better protections for workers, have trainings or skill building? So that's one component. Another one is around equity and social protection, and to have the social justice there for especially vulnerable frontline communities that often suffer or experience harms. And another aspect, which I think is interesting, that has also to do with what some of you put in the word cloud around shifting power, and how can we have inclusive decision making where the workers, community are actually part of making the decisions, of shaping policies that affect them directly. So this is also an important element of just transition. And then overall, the bigger part of sustainable or regenerative development, where we're moving away from extractive, high polluting economy to a regenerative, sustainable economy. And as I said, it's going to be interesting, maybe as you're listening, to keep those kind of components in mind and hear how some or all of this may be implemented in the cases that we're going to listen to today. This is from the Climate Justice Alliance, the graphic that I've mentioned before. And this is kind of shows part of the transition and the kind of bigger cycle. So on the left, you see the kind of mainstream economic, political, and social model that we have. Also a political model where there's a lot around the resources being extractive, a very linear economy that takes things, manufactures, produces, and wastes them again at the end. There's a lot of concentration of wealth and power. There's exploitation of workers. There's aspects of militarization or power also in our governance systems. And there's a colonial or consumerist mindset that runs a lot of the show. So the idea is to stop the bad and to build the new, with all of this. So this is part of the transition that you can see to a system where care and actually the sacredness and protection of life is at the center, where resources are regenerated, where we have economy fit inside of nature, not the other way around, where we have ecological and social justice and well-being, where we have deep democracy, where we have people power, where we have cooperation. So this is the kind of bigger shift that need all of us basically to participate in to make it happen. This is also from the Climate Justice Alliance, just another kind of perspective to look into this, which is some of the principles. As I said, it's a quite broad term and framework that can encompass many, many different things, and it definitely needs to be locally adapted, place-based, decolonial. And these are some of the principles that they share. And under also a clear understanding that the transition is inevitable. Like we're reaching so many planetary boundaries and points that we need to transition in some which way. That's actually it's not a choice at this point anymore. The question is, how do we transition and to what do we transition and who participates in the transition and how? Because while the transition is inevitable and things are changing, whether we want it or not, justice is not. So it needs all of us to make sure that we don't transition just into anything, but that we actually transition into a more just, equitable, regenerative world for all. And this is also, I think, an interesting aspect for some of the current also technological, economic, political dynamics to actually see, do they really support ecological and social justice? Do they support well-being and equity? Or do they extract more? Do they harm more? Do they concentrate power more? And this is, I think, really helpful also in the complexity of new developments and of solutions, which some of them I would say are false solutions. They don't actually solve anything really. They're just another version of continuing the system that we saw in the graphic on the left side. So some of the principles that are shared here is buen vivir, a kind of good life, also the life within planetary boundaries and with well-being, meaningful work, self-determination, no, and sovereignty is a core part, equitable distribution of resources and power, regenerative ecological economies, also the value of culture and traditions, solidarity is a key principle, and also really concrete action, no, building what we need now, not waiting, not not waiting for somebody else to do it, but also not waiting for some future point in the, far distance, but what can we do now? And I think this is for me an exciting part where we will also hear our case stories where people are doing something now, even though the big system is still the way it is and not everything is solved. But we're going to hear from 3 inspiring stories of community organizers and practitioners who share concrete experiences of things that they're already doing and building now, of some of the lessons that they've learned, some of the things that maybe we can learn by hearing from them, of these stories of a just eco-social transition and coming very much from a community-led perspective. So we have a Solidarity Economy and Creative Reuse Center in France, where Veronique will be sharing her story of how to support social and also disability inclusion of workers, doing trainings, creating green jobs. We're going to hear from Reset in the Czech Republic, that is an organization working to empower local communities, specifically with a story from doing that in coal regions and developing renewable energy communities, also including low-income households and minorities. And we're also going to hear from another post-industrial region in Poland with Drana and the Jana Black Foundation, and how they are using community organizing to bring together frontline communities and people and work for access to green spaces and housing. Okay. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Veronique.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Veronique Pagiel, and I work at Atelier d'Eco Solidaire, which is the Creative Reuse Center in Bordeaux, which is a community-based project. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's not the first page, but we do see your screen.
Yeah, hold on a second. Okay, thanks. Okay, so when we hear the words ecological transition, we often think about renewable energy, climate change, recycling, or green technologies. But behind all of these issues lies a very important question. How can we transform our economy and our lifestyle in a way that protects the environment while also supporting people and communities? And this is exactly what a just transition is about. A just transition means building a future that is not only greener, but also more inclusive. It means creating local jobs, fostering social ties, supporting vulnerable people, and rethinking how we produce and consume. Today, I would like to illustrate the idea through a very concrete example, the work of our Creative Reuse Center. Let me begin by describing what happens in a reuse center. Every day, individuals and companies bring objects they no longer need. Most of them, these are furniture, household objects, textiles, books, toys, decorative items, or lighting fixtures. At first glance, many of these items might appear to be waste, but inside a reuse center, the perspective changes completely. What one person considers useless can become a valuable resource for someone else. The first step is sorting. Furniture and objects are weighed, categorized, cleaned, and evaluated. Most of them are put back into circulation at affordable prices, and others are repaired, transformed, or redesigned. And only the items that are truly unusable are sent to recycling. And this is a very important point. Our priority is reuse before recycling. There's a crucial difference between the two. In simple terms, reuse preserves the object, while recycling destroys the material to create something new. And environmentally speaking, reuse is much more efficient because it saves energy, raw materials, transport, and of course, industrial production.
Just to say, Veronique, what we see on the screen is not changing. I'm not
No,
sure.
that's normal.
Okay, good, good. Just
Yeah,
double
yeah,
check.
there's one picture for each part and sometimes several pictures. Yeah,
Thanks.
but thanks for checking. Thank you. What makes this initiative especially interesting is the context, in the context of a just transition, is that it's not only about ecology, it's also deeply social. The Reuse Center operates within what we call the social and solidarity economy. It's a non-profit association whose goal is not to maximize profits, but to create positive impact for the community. Today, the organization employs 16 people. Among them, 14 are permanent employees. This is important because it shows that ecological initiatives can also create stable and meaningful local employment. Very often, environmental policies are perceived as a threat to jobs. But here we see the opposite. Reuse activities create local work that cannot easily be relocated, and these jobs require many different skills: woodworking, sewing, upholstery, decorative painting, logistics, eco-design, repair, sales, and educational outreach. So this is not only about waste management, it's also a project about craftsmanship, transmission of skills, and professional integration. Why a creative reuse center and not just a reuse center? Here, furniture is not only sold at low cost or repaired, it's sometimes completely transformed. For example, old tables are redesigned into modern furniture. Reclaimed wood is used to build entirely new pieces. The workshops combine craftsmanship with creativity. Furniture, objects, and materials are transformed into high-quality designer pieces for companies or public institutions. This creates what we call a virtuous cycle. Waste becomes a resource, and creativity becomes a tool for ecological transition. What is also very interesting is the philosophy behind the design process. In conventional production systems, companies first design a product and then search for the materials needed to manufacture it. Here, the process is different, is reversed. The materials come first. The designers work with whatever materials are available and imagine how they can be turned into beautiful and useful objects. This completely changes our relationship with consumption and production. But perhaps the most powerful aspect of this project is its human impact. People come to the Reuse Center for many different reasons. Some people cannot afford new furniture, others because they care deeply about environmental issues. Some are looking for vintage objects or unique handmade pieces. But many people also come for social reasons. The Reuse Center works with school groups, design students, young people who experience psychosocial difficulties, people recovering from illness, retired people at risk of social isolation, and people going through career changes. One particular powerful example involved a young volunteer who had experienced severe burnout while working as an industrial designer in a major international company. After this difficult experience, he started volunteering in the wood workshop. Little by little, through practical work, creativity, and teamwork, he regained confidence. This experience became a real turning point in his life. Eventually, he decided to retrain professionally, and today he works as a carpenter. This example perfectly shows what a just transition can mean in practice. It's not only about reducing carbon emissions, it is also about helping people reconnect with meaningful work, healthier lifestyles, and stronger social relationships. Another example concerns women recovering from serious illnesses, such as breast cancer. These are women facing psychological, financial, and professional difficulties after remission. Through collective and creative activities, these women are able to rebuild confidence and reconnect socially. These examples are difficult to measure through traditional economic indicators, as you can imagine, and yet they represent enormous social value. At the same time, I'll let you have a look at the pictures. At the same time, the experience of the reuse
Veronique,
center
they're still not changing for us. We see the same screen.
Ah,
I think you need to
okay.
scroll or move.
No, well, they're changing for me. Okay. Which slide are you stuck on?
It's the same, a social economy project, not just an
Ah,
environment
okay.
project with the two pictures. That's the same from the beginning.
From the beginning.
Yes, this was what you shared first, and this is the same. We've seen this entire time.
And here?
It's not changing.
Okay. Maybe it's because it's a very heavy document with I don't know, heavy
Is it
pictures as
changing for
well.
anybody else?
It's changing for me, but I don't know why it's not changing.
Okay.
It's a
I don't know if
repeated.
I don't know if you have a link that you could put so people look at the pictures.
I have a document. Can I upload it on the chat? The PDF?
No. You can send it to me in an email and we can put it somewhere and link it so people look at it
Okay.
later. Yeah.
You want me to do it now, or will I
No,
just finish?
after I think finish what
Yeah.
you wanted to share for
Sorry about
sure.
that. It's a pity because they are beautiful pictures, but it's
Yeah, we'll make sure people get them. Yes.
okay.
As I said, like for me, it looks like you would need to scroll or something on the
But I scroll each
and
time.
okay.
Hold on.
Or if you stop sharing and start
And
again.
here, can you see the difference? No?
No.
But
I don't know.
maybe Veronique is sharing different, like the view. Maybe you have two options to share something else. But sometimes you can share, you know, document, or sometimes you can just share another screen if you have open more than one screen, one document.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now something
Yes,
changed.
yes.
Okay.
Whatever you did, that's good.
Yeah, but I actually don't see it on my screen, which is very weird.
Okay. But now we see the human dimension, rebuilding confidence and meaning.
Okay, and if I oh yeah, if I end this, it's
Yes.
okay. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
It
Brilliant.
is, and it is beautiful pictures. So
Okay, I'll go back then.
we'll give you extra 2 minutes to share
When I
here.
talked about creativity, these are the
Um,
pictures that I wanted to show about what basically we do here. And so I talked about the human dimensions, again, various groups working together, young people and women. And so the limits of the current economic system now. At the same time, the experience of the reuse center also reveals the limitations of our current economic model. A community-based reuse center cannot survive through market logic alone. Why? Because a large part of its value is social. Creating social connections, supporting vulnerable people, educating young people, raising awareness among local residents, and reducing waste are activities that generate collective benefits, but not necessarily large profits. This is why public support remains essential. In our case, the local authority in charge of waste management in Bordeaux provide the premises because they recognize the environmental and social value of our work. And this raises a broader political question. Today, large amounts of public money are still invested in waste destruction systems, such as incinerators and landfills. Yet, according to European waste management principles, the priority should be first waste reduction, then reuse, and only afterwards recycling. Extending the lifespan of objects should be central to environmental policy. The reuse center is now involved in a much larger project called ECOLISE. ECOLISE will be a large circular economy village dedicated entirely to second-hand goods and reuse activities. Different organizations will work together there. Furniture reuse, textile recovery, toy refurbishment, sports equipment reuse, appliance repair, and even food recovery initiatives. The idea is to create an entire ecosystem where people can both donate and purchase second-hand goods in one place. This project shows that the circular economy is not marginal anymore. It has the potential to become a real alternative economic model, and the employment potential is huge. Here is a striking comparison. sorry, processing 10,000 tons of waste through industrial recycling creates 10 jobs. Processing the same amount through community-based reuse activities can create up to 850 jobs. This shows that ecological transition can also become a powerful driver of local employment and social inclusion. To conclude, the example of the Bordeaux Creative Reuse Center shows that ecological transition does not only concern technology or performance. It's also about people. It's about restoring confidence and helping people find their place in society. It's about reducing waste, of course. It's about transmitting skills. And it is about building stronger local communities. The Reuse Center reminds us that another model is possible, a model where waste becomes a resource, where creativity replaces overconsumption, and where ecological transition goes hand in hand with social justice. And that ultimately is the true meaning of a just transition. Thank you very much all for your attention, and sorry about the little technical glitch.
Thank you so much for sharing this story. Super, super beautiful. Well done. And I'm glad we could recover the photos because you
Okay.
presented them beautifully. They're visually really
Okay,
powerful. Yeah, no,
thank
thank
you.
you so much. So we'll hand it over to our next speaker and story from Veronica and Reset. Um, yes, we see the screen
Perfect.
and we hear you. Beautiful.
So, hello everyone. My name is Veronika. I'm from the Czech Republic and working with a Reset platform for socio-ecological transformation. And this presentation will be about community energy or about energy community that we are supporting in the coal mining region. And I will tell you a little bit more about our background in working on just transition and how this idea developed and what are we currently doing. And this project we have, the energy community is called a light bulb, or actually it's called SK light bulb in Děčín. So that's why we also have this logo, and in Czech it's žárovka. So you'll probably see this weird Czech word everywhere. Yes, first about Reset. So we are technically an NGO existing for last 6 years, and we are based on people who were previously or currently still in various grassroots organizations about climate or housing and all these kind of topics. And now some of us are forming this like official NGO Reset to be able to reach for some kind of like bigger and more organized projects. And we focus on, we deal with like multiple topics. The first one is the role of oligarchs, but also banks and insurer company in driving the climate crisis. So it's more like campaigning work. But then my team is more about just transition as a topic and building solidarity-based economic structures. So I think, for example, from Veronique's previous presentation, you can maybe imagine something what is a solidarity-based economic project. So we're working on this kind of also cooperatives and similar projects. We are also doing a lot of supporting and kind of education for social and ecological movements. We're trying to deal with energy poverty and access to affordable energy. And we also have a team focusing solely on housing injustice and rising rents. And the project I'm going to talk about is a bit combining more of these topics together. But first, I will tell you from the beginning when we were talking about what the just transition mean. So it seems that we kind of have a mutual understanding that what we were doing before a few years ago was that we were really focusing on these like coal mining regions, and especially about these just transition funding and how money should be divided for the actual transformation of the regions. And originally, as I already mentioned, we were more like grassroots groups that would do like blockades of coal mines and this kind of like really climate activism. And through that, we built some relationships with the people from coal mining region on which we could build when we were campaigning around the Just Transition Fund, because maybe you also have this experience. It was very kind of corrupted. It was clear from the beginning that most of the money will be taken by the coal mining companies, actually, who are the biggest polluters and who should pay in the first place. And there was no transparent and participatory processes for the local people to actually like decide what they want to happen with their region. So the photo here is from one kind of happening when local people from Ústecký coal mining region surprised the European Committee visit, and they handed them posters which were saying with the words of local people that they want to be included in the decision making, and they don't want to only read afterwards in the media how all the money were already divided among the biggest polluters and the biggest oligarchs. So that was kind of fun, because the European Commission was like, oh, actually, so maybe this just transition is not going so well. But then on the other hand, you know, the money of the EU has to be spent in certain dates. So at the end, it didn't really change anything. And that was also for us a bit shift, that we were thinking we really have to organize around something that we can kind of really feel and touch, and that which will really like bring some difference to the people, and not just like theoretically trying to get more justice from some funding distribution from the EU. And that's why we were thinking about having energy community, which will just mean that we will make something that will be ours, that we will own it, and that we will gain some renewable energy from it. So it's like it doesn't really change the system, but it changed the situation for the people who are engaged in it. So we started to work on this in 2023. It's a very long process because we didn't even have any laws for it at that time. So it was a lot of research and a lot of testing what we can do and what we can't do. And then finally last year, we officially started our legal entity, which is called the SK Lightbulb Žárovka. And currently we are in the time that we're trying to fundraise for our first photovoltaic installation. So we don't even like started the actual sharing of the electricity. It's a very long process, and I will tell you why. Just to clarify, our motivation was not just the cheaper electricity, but it was really like the social aim to kind of like start this first thing that we can show as a like positive example, and it can inspire other people. And we also really wanted to test how we can include people from low income households, tenants, and just people who don't own their own houses and they don't have money to actually get the photovoltaic. So we are testing this. And we are doing this learning by doing. We are monitoring everything that we did. We write brochures about it. So then we can be inspiring for other communities, and we can share our experience. What we have done so far is that we really we tried to build up on already existing relationships. As I mentioned, we already have these relationships from the previous like activistic activities that we did. So we didn't look for like brand new people. Then we were just, you know, talking around about this idea of energy community and how it can help with like, yeah, both the ecological issues, but also the financial issues of paying for electricity. And we started to do like one-on-one individual conversations, so we could actually gather what people think and what are their doubts and questions. because we wanted to kind of gather it and get ready for what are the answers that can comfort the people, or like the, you know, information that we didn't think of before that people really need to know for their decision. And then we had one meeting for all the people who kind of showed interest. And then we didn't want to have this first meeting where people will just raise all these doubts and questions, because it could like decrease the whole trust of the whole group, that there was like so many doubts, because obviously it's like a whole new thing. Nobody tried it before. So that's why we started with the individual conversations. Then we had this first meeting on which we wanted to get everyone on the same kind of level of understanding, even like technical and economical and legal questions. So everybody will kind of know what we need to do and what does it mean and all that. And we really used a lot of pictures for it, because it's very kind of difficult topic, no? Like you have a house with photovoltaic, you have other houses, there are like wires in between them, then you have to still pay some money to the like national energy company and all that. It's like such a complicated topic, especially for people who just doing this in their free time and they don't have like engineer education and all that. And then we designed a model how we will share the electricity. That's quite a technical thing of like which households can actually produce how much and how much they need to consume, and also at what times during the day and all that. And we went for a little trip to Austria, where these things are already happening, and we could just have some inspiration and see, okay, it can really actually work. So we are more motivated to try to finish our project. And yeah, then we found a legal entity. Oh, sorry. So yeah, the challenges obviously are financial, like we don't have the capital, so we need to do the fundraising, and all the system and subsidies and all these like issues, unfortunately, are not really directed to like low income households. They are just targeted for people who already have houses and already have some capital to actually like buy it, and then they can even get subsidies, while the people who don't have anything cannot get the subsidies. So, you know, this logic works also in the Czech Republic. And the technical and legal, as I said, is a lot of things that you need to understand. So it's just very complicated topic. And then the social reality is like, especially people who are tenants who live in the rent and they don't own their own houses, they really have only few options like what to do, because they have no power to decide anything about the house. And also people generally, because all these previous experiences, have big mistrust towards institution, energy company. And if you come to them and start to talk about energy communities, they have really, really like doubts about it. So they need some trustworthy guiding person who is really going to like walk them through the whole process. So yeah, we just really think that with community organizing, like without community organizing, we can't imagine to even include any low-income people in community energy at all. So that's our lesson learned, and maybe we can talk more during the discussion. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this story and for your very tangible and real efforts on the ground to do all the organizing to develop. I think it really shows the social building that happens, and it's in a way the electricity produced will be the light bulb, you know, in a way at the end of that process, you know, celebrating that, but also build on everything you've done so far. So we'll pass it over to our third case and story with Joanna. Go for it.
Okay. Hello, my name is Joanna. I'm from Poland, Upper Silesia, and today I want to share how community organizing can help in just transition. And I've been working on this topic for 5 years now. And during that time, I have seen how community organizing can help people become active participants in change rather than passive recipients of decision. And for me, just transition is all about that, to involve people in change. So today I have collected several examples from this journey and from different initiatives I have worked on. What connects all of these stories is the region. You can see on the map in Poland, Upper Silesia. The region is called the Black Heart of Poland because of the coal mines. And this Black Heart played a role in our later campaigns. We wanted to change this narrative, and I will tell a little bit more later about that. So Upper Silesia faces multiple challenges right now at the same time, and the phase out of coal raises questions, of course, about the future of work, economic security, and local identity. At the same time, we experience many the same challenges as communities across Europe, as declining trust, social fragmentation, and democratic fatigue. So one thing I discovered very early in my work, and this photo is from 2021, I was working with Common Think Foundation on just transition topic. And what we discovered that people do not listen and do not cooperate when they feel that something is being imposed on them. And with just transition is very often the problem that it's a design somewhere and people are not feeling that it's something they can participate. So that's why Common Think Foundation at the time choose community organizing as a way to introduce the idea of just transition into public debate. And we started in Ruda Śląska, and Ruda Śląska is a very traditional mining city. And this photo shows our first meeting with local communities, and we choose the topic of mining damage to residential buildings. A little bit more about community organizing. It consists of several steps and is used usually to build community power, and that's why I like it so much, and to create a social change, very often through citizen campaigns. But today I would like to focus on what happens beneath the visible campaigns, what we build and not is not always that visible. Because in my experience, regardless of whether a campaign wins or loses, community organizing leaves behind groups that are more democratic, more collaborative, and more resilient. And in these days, I see that it's very important. And it also gives people a sense of participation and ownership. So that's absolutely, from my perspective, that's the key of just transition. How we started? We started with a listening campaign, and traditionally community organizing starts with door knocking, and in our region, people not necessarily like this kind of thing, because in a big city they don't like strangers knocking to the door. But it's a good way to reach out to people who are not involved on the daily basis. So we still are doing this as the community organizers. But also I spend a lot of time talking with people where they naturally gathered, and this picture is from from that place. So in parks, community centers, public spaces, and informal meetings. And in Ruda Śląska, this listening helped me understand how to talk about just transition in the first place. So it was a game changer. Very quickly, I realized that simply asking people about closing mines would not work, because people felt that I was coming to them with ready-made solution and trying to convince them of something. And like the purpose of just transition isn't this, of course. So by listening, you can build engagement. Another important step in Ruda Śląska was creating a group. And that group functioned democratically. And well, we tried to build a group where everyone feel responsible for community. And it was not that obvious in Ruda Śląska because the town is really conservative, I would say, and they really like a lot of people there because they work in the mines or hard industry. They like this hierarchy. They have bosses. They feel comfortable with it. So my role was to gradually shift these expectations away from the idea that I would solve problems for the group. And we did this by introducing dialogue-based methods, and encouraging a participant to take turns, for example, in facilitating meetings. So they can just see that there is no one boss, no one leader there. They are all leaders. And this is where also I learned the importance of working at the pace of people who I am organizing with. Because if we truly believe that this principle of leaving no one behind, that principle must begin in the organizing process. Like this is the way we start. Also, part of community organizers' work is developing leaders, and mainly because many community leaders, especially in our region, still operate under an outdated belief that a leader should do everything for the group. So, for example, in Blooming Silesia, we used a snowflake model, and this is the model which introduced distributed leadership, and the whole coalition, the whole campaign was built on that. We invited leaders from different cities, and we tried to develop their capacity, their skills to run the campaigns by themselves. And one example is from Chorzów, where I live, and I run a foundation right now. And this is my colleague. And just 2 weeks ago, the city council approved the change in the local urban plan by a single vote. What Joanna wanted to do is to include the area as a green space, not a space when developers can build. And it was a huge fight. The temperature was really high, but she succeeds. So we are really happy about her. And she is also the part of Blooming Silesia coalition right now. So the power in the people is still there. And this is also, I would like to mention really briefly, although it was a campaign I work on outside my professional role, but it proved extremely valuable for the activities that followed, because by this action, by this mobilization, we built trust around social action, actually. The campaign took place during a period of intense political activity with national, local and European election in Poland. And media attention was really high, and politicians were very eager to engage in this situation. And my challenge was to use this momentum while preventing the campaign from becoming politically captured. And it was a major victory back then at the time, and it would have been very easy to give to be in this temptation to somehow capitalize this attention and interest that the campaign gathered. But I felt strongly that since we had said from the very beginning that these were not political activities, we could not afford to undermine that trust. Because like rebuilding trust in democracy starts with our own actions and with staying true to the commitments we make to our communities. And a little bit more about Blooming Silesia Coalition and the whole campaign. As I mentioned earlier, this campaign was built, but was led by a network, a coalition. The whole idea and the concept was initiated by Common Think Foundation, where I worked at the time, and the whole process was really important. We wanted to deal with some kind of isolation. There was a lot of groups working separately, and the idea of building coalition was to feel stronger and more connected by doing certain things together. So we work on defining demands, postulates. We work together generating ideas for actions, shaping the campaign's message. And during one workshops, the idea emerged to challenge this dominant narrative about Silesia, this black heart. So we decided that we want to create a green heart, that we want to build this new narrative about Silesia region. And those are pictures from a few actions that we use this image really strongly in the media and through the activities. And finally, this is something I'm working on right now. Through all those projects, we realized that there is a huge need for something more permanent, a physical place that could support community life and future initiatives. And that was the beginning of Jana Platz Foundation, which I'm representing today. Although we are working only for a year together, we are building on the previous experiences and relationships and networks. So we are not starting the whole process from the scratch. We already have this power from the previous actions. And that's also something I really appreciate in community organizing, that the one campaign, when you end it, finish it, whatever you succeed or not, you can build on this something bigger, something stronger. The leaders are more equipped, the groups are better connected, people feel the power, feel involved. And until these days, a lot of leaders still are working on their own local campaigns, and the relationships are there. They learned how to be a democratic group, how to be resilient, how to support each other. So yeah, so I hope some of these ideas will be helpful for your work on just transition. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think this was great. Lots of good lessons and learnings and practical things. So, and we're a little bit over time, but we still have enough time to do breakout groups. So I'm going to do this. There's going to be 3 breakout groups. Let me just share my screen here also. So we're going to have 3 breakout groups with the 3 speakers. You can choose your room. We hope there will be some kind of balance. I think all of them were excellent and very interesting. So this is a moment, of course, where you can follow up, maybe ask some questions, but it's also a moment for you to really share, all of everybody here joining the webinar today. You also have experiences. You're doing different types of local work, organizing. So these are just 2 invitations for questions to share, exchange within small groups. What are you working on when it comes to a just eco-social transition and using the power of community? And also maybe a kind of reflection questions together of what might become possible if we in our communities embed social inclusion, equity, and justice into our work. We heard 3 examples where this is really embedded, and it's something of how you do basically everything. So this is a kind of reflection question for all of us. We'll have myself, Chiara, and Jofi from the ECOLISE team in each of the breakout rooms, so we can exchange and take a few notes or main points. So with that, I'm gonna open the breakout rooms, and you will be able to choose which one to go. I think everybody's coming back from the breakout groups. I hope you had some interesting exchanges, question, dialogue in that. So we're coming into the last kind of part of our meeting, and I share one last slide here. So this is just a moment for kind of final reflections, learnings, insights, maybe from the breakout group, from the presentation. We also have a feedback form. We would really appreciate to get some responses for this. Chiara, you can put the link also in the chat. And you can take some minutes now at the end of the session, give a bit of feedback that we'll harvest, but also we can use the time if somebody wants to share something speaking, you can raise your hand, or you can drop something in the Zoom chat for everybody to see, and the form for the feedback. There's something burning, an insight and appreciation, I see.
Can I just make a suggestion? I recently attended the FIFE's conference in Cannes, which was the Festival of Ecological and Social Impact short videos. And I just think it's a way forward to start developing impact case studies that could be around thematic subjects that would help to engage the public in the work we're doing. You want to look it up, it's FIFES 26 in Cannes, just at the end of May.
Okay, thanks. Also, maybe you can put it in the chat, Marion. And Lorenzo, a short comment or reflection?
Yes, about France is what we have been discussing in the working room. In France, all the public funding are almost stopping. So it's an opportunity to find different way to work together. And what I wanted to say is how we could, at the level of not only territory, but on Europe, how to find a way to finance the commons in common. Not, and that is a very big question we should work on with ECOLISE. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Lorenzo. Anybody else that wants to share something? Otherwise, please use the feedback form to share maybe some reflections or main learnings. And as we said, it's really helpful for us to get this feedback, to see some of the impact and learnings from this webinar. We will do more webinars. Maybe this is I can share also the last slide that I've put together. Just with a big thank you for your participation, your interest, your curiosity, questions. Of course, to our 3 speakers, thank you so much for the work that you do and for joining us this morning to share some of your stories and learnings. It was a real pleasure to have you. From the Funding for Futures project, the work that we're doing at ECOLISE, this is one webinar of a whole series. The next webinar in terms of timing that we have is on 30th of June. This will focus on the European Day of Sustainable Communities for this year, which is both an online campaign that showcases the power of community action in different sustainability and just transition topics. And it's also an invitation for hosting dialogues with policymakers to make this bridge from grassroots community action to more political change. As part of the Funding for a Future project, we have organizations that were receiving small grants that will organize these policy dialogues, but it's also an open invitation to anyone in the network to organize or to participate online or in person in these event or campaigning activities. So if you're curious, join the next webinar. And then we also have a last call for these kind of seed funding for Pathfinder communities in 5 different countries. The program is at the moment like this. So for France, Spain, Portugal, Croatia, and Finland, and the call for applications closes on the 22nd of June. So in case this is interesting or relevant for you, check it out on the website. And yes, that's the end of our session. Then let me go back to see everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I know we also had some people from that are part of the Regenerative Community Fund participating today. It's a real pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye bye.